The word collaboration has come up, obviously, several times throughout this gathering, whether it was said specifically, implied, illuminated, illustrated. I think we could say that without the spirit of collaboration, this group would probably not even exist. It's kind of the core principle and basis. The title of my talk here is drawn from a statement made by the Assistant Secretary General of the United Nations at a gathering in 2017, a convening called the New Frontiers Forum in Boston, where thought leaders across many disciplines had gathered, not unsimilar to this gathering. For the past 2 years, I haven't been able to get this sentence, this statement out of my mind. The future of the world depends on us being better collaborators. For me, it is a profound call to action because he was saying this to a room full of Nobel laureates, to museum directors from around the world, to inventors, to ballet dancers. It was very cross-disciplinary. And he emphasized to this group the role that collaboration plays in addressing the grand challenges and the issues and the climate change and the social injustices and inequality. But I heard it as something more. What if instead of just solving problems and putting out fires, what if our role as collaborators, artists, scientists, engineers, whatever our expertise and our passions, what if we came together to imagine the world that we want to live in? This is what this group does. To imagine the world that we want to live in and the power to actualize that vision. Collaboration is a key component of creativity and innovation in the 21st century. As historical context, more than 90% of published papers in science and engineering today are produced by teams compared to 50% just 50 years ago. These changes are necessary because diverse skills are needed to achieve meaningful results for the key problems of our times. It is similar, of course, in art design. More tools mean more possibilities, which means more collaboration. We see trends towards collaborations that are challenging the notion of solitary genius and modernity. The people of this gathering, of course, wrote the book on collaboration, or books. But I'd like to share with you some key points and examples from two publications that you might find helpful in your work, maybe by gaining support through grant writing or possibly institutional support with your administrators. These reports, released recently by the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine, can be viewed and downloaded for free at the National Academy Press website here. The one on the right, we have copies that Kati had mentioned to you earlier. Now, the one on the left is a result of a 2-year review of literature programs, a consensus report that the Board on Higher Education did at the National Academies. In this publication, there's a list of over 200 integrative programs, as well as a gallery of exemplars of cross-disciplinary, multidisciplinary, and transdisciplinary programs, primarily focused in the U.S. I'll add a note, on April 12th, will be the 1-year mark from when this was released, and there will be a big convening in DC at the National Academy of Sciences to see where that report has gone over the past year. The one on the right is a review of a 15-year program called the National Academy's Keck Futures Initiative. This was an evolving program that sought to bring cross-disciplinary teams together to work on seed ideas, each year learning from experience on how to better facilitate cross-disciplinary dialogue. From the years 2003 through 2017, more than 2,000 researchers and other creative practitioners across disciplines and sectors attended an annual think tank-style gathering. Seed grants awarded to the conference participants enabled the pursuit of bold new ideas. It is difficult to track and quantify a lot of material that came out or to really get the full picture of the benefits of such a program. But we know that our NACFE's $14.7 million invested in seed grants to conference participants resulted in $158 million of add-on funding, 205 publications, and 6 patents. It also supported 94 graduate students and 42 postdoctoral fellows. And this is just what the evaluators were able to gather. During the last 3 years of NACFE, my office, the Cultural Programs of the NAS, was involved in bringing in artists and designers into the conversation. The hypothesis was that by infusing art and design into every aspect of the NACFE conference, we would engage new audiences, strengthen its ability to promote innovation, and broaden the impact. There is a general agreement among the steering committee that every frontier of human inquiry is art science based in nature, in the sense that intuition and imagination are equal partners to deduction and precision. Authors of the NACFE report noted significant changes in the NACFE experience the last 3 years when artists and designers were involved. A record number of applicants were received, increasing the size and range of the pool of participants. They also noted that although exchanges were challenging at times, that the ability for the groups to arrive at creative ideals faster increased with artists and designers present. Artists presented at the conference created a sense of the unexpected, a sense of wonder and challenging of perceptions. Now, I will point out, if you notice in the upper right-hand corner, there's a video monitor, which is actually playing videos from the Living Architecture group. I believe somewhere around the center, there's a bald-headed figure in blue that is our beloved Mr. Beasley, I think. Liz Lehrman is conducting a movement exercise, basically getting scientists and engineers to dance. The gentleman kind of not dancing up there is Ben Schneiderman, who many of you know invented the hyperlink, among other things. I'd like to share briefly a couple of examples. I chose examples that I thought, there's several people that have been through here today that attended the NACFE. I'm trying to maybe present some examples that are outside of the range of what you might have expected. One of the questions raised in the integrative learning report was, does integrative education and research produce better citizens? A project created by a NACFE seed group focused on a citizen scientist, citizen artist project. The collaborative team of scientists, museum professionals, and artists included Brandon Ballinger, who is a published biologist as well as an artist with an extensive art exhibit record. The project, called Crude Life, was based conceptually in Brandon's previous installation entitled Collapse, shown here at the NAS. It was an artist's response to the changing food pyramid in the Gulf of Mexico after the oil spill catastrophe. It contains 440 jars of specimens collected after the spill. Empty jars were included to represent species that had not been seen since the catastrophe. His NACFE team's project was called Crude Life, a citizen art and science investigation of Gulf of Mexico biodiversity after the Deepwater Horizon oil spill. It was an interdisciplinary art, science, and outreach project focused on raising public awareness of the impact of the oil spill on the ecosystems, on the regional environments, and as well as cultural challenges. There was a citizen science survey, a most wanted poster designed to enlist the service of fishermen and the local community to help identify species that had not been seen since the spill. And when I talked to Brandon last week, one species has been identified and confirmed through this process. There have been two anecdotal discoveries of two other species. So there's an engagement here beyond just the art installation. But to engage the public, a portable art science museum of Gulf biodiversity was created. The exhibit consists of 10 travel chests, which are virtually cabinets of curiosities. The intricate wood lining and partitions that you see here were beautifully fabricated using fallen trees gathered after hurricanes in Louisiana and Florida. Made of interactive displays, data visualizations, preserved specimens, and works of visual art, the museum has been temporarily installed at local community gathering areas. The cases are portable so that they can be set up anywhere. Breaking free of the gallery space, they can be exhibited on fishing piers, picnic areas, wherever there is a need to start a conversation. Many of the exemplars in both of the reports were focused on health and well-being. Areas of exploration included dance and movement, as well as performance and theatrical arts. Also, the evolving practices and methodologies of visual art therapies are exemplified here by the work of Melissa Walker. Melissa is a creative arts therapist at the National Intrepid Center of Excellence. A division of Walter Reed National Military Medical Center works with active duty service members suffering from traumatic brain injury and psychological health conditions. Melissa designed the Healing Arts program in 2010, where she continues to engage her patients in a mask-making process, a powerful mechanism for helping them express invisible wounds that often are a result of traumatic experiences. The report and seed groups also looked at creating business models focused more on empathetic and compassionate approaches. Limitless Solutions is a nonprofit organization that uses 3D printing to create personalized bionics and affordable prosthetics. The organization grew out of work that the founding team did as students at the University of Central Florida. According to the group's website, the organization is, quote, devoted to building a generation of innovators who use their skills and passion to improve the world around them. We believe that no family should have to pay for their child to receive an arm. Now what we want to lead by example, encourage communities to innovate with compassion, end of quote. Now, I thought about this as we were looking and listening to a lot of organic design styles, and I realized that the design of this prosthetic doesn't really fit at all the philosophy of the Living Architecture group. However, look at the smile on that 10-year-old's face. It's not something that a 10-year-old is going to understand. They understand comic books, which gave me the belief that we should actually start the Living Architecture League of Justice comic book. So after we get done here, we'll open up a call for proposals for a background and the initial design for Philip Beasley's superhero costume. So one way that Cultural Programs was able to support NACFE in the dissemination of the integration report was by connecting the public with these ideals and continuing the conversation between the annual gatherings. We did this through our regular art science salon called DASER, or DC Art Science Evening Rendezvous. So we hosted these events on nearly a monthly basis for 8 years now. Each event has 4 presenters from a variety of disciplines, 10 to 15-minute talks, just like we have been doing for the past 2 days, and then to engage in a conversation. And the concept is simple. By engaging across disciplines over time consistently, we begin to understand and develop empathy across our silos. And DASER is part of a Leonardo network, the International Society of Art, Science, and Technology. And I believe the Leonardo Journal that the Living Architecture Group's work in is on display in the gallery as well. If you're not familiar with Leonardo's journal, you might want to take a look at that. So the DASER is part of a network called LASER, Leonardo Art Science Evening Rendezvous, and there are now, this is actually a little bit out of date map, there's now 34 similar art science salons around the world. And I should mention that there is one located here in Toronto. There's actually 3 in Canada. So the ideal here is that as you travel or wherever you're from, there might be a community of practice meeting for a social engagement and to exchange and network. And as we begin, I mean, this is kind of a horrific honor to be the last person, but it might be something to worth taking a moment to pause and to begin reflect on the discussions that we've had over the past couple of days. And I hope that we might continue to ask ourselves, why do we do what we do? Where is that passion coming from that we've all experienced from each other the past couple of days? And how does the way that we answer that guide us toward creating more meaningful work that has impact? Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, JD. We do have some time for questions.
Good.
Could you explain what prompted the science community to engage with art and design? Because within the United Kingdom, if I can use that phrase, we still talk about STEM. You know, art doesn't feature, and our EPSRC doesn't have the enlightened aspect that SHIRK has. So was there a key trigger moment?
I think we're still in that key trigger moment because the artists and designers were welcomed in with a certain sort of resistance, but also enthusiasm. They just didn't know how to deal with it. You know, it's that you bring the UK up. I mean, a lot of this came out of the Wellcome Trust and what Ken Arnold did by bringing in that matter of fact, I think in the 80s, he's the one who first coined the term sci art, which now has gone to art sci, and you bring up the STEM and STEAM. In the not this report, but the integration report, there's actually a wonderful history of how the STEM and STEAM dialogue came up, and a lot of it has to revolve around policy and the way education is structured, or the conversation around education is structured with policy. But I'm kind of a big advocate of not using those labels. I mean, the one conversation I had with Ken Arnold, who coined those phrases, realized that by naming and trying to categorize things, you're actually reinforcing the boundaries that you're trying to transcend. And even though we call our art science salons, if I had to do it over again, it isn't. So I think that this group, those phrases and those barriers are so. The conversations of the past couple of days have just sort of transcended past that, and it's kind of something to be mindful of because it's still a conversation that's going on, especially when we're still trying to bring people in to help them understand transdisciplinary approach to things and kind of being open to it. Yeah.
I actually need the mic because nobody can ever hear me. I'm wondering, it's a very specific question. Does NAS directly collaborate with universities if there is this effort of cross-disciplinary agency which comes from the university, or is there any advice? And I'm asking very specifically. I'm at Carnegie Mellon and in Pittsburgh, and there is a new initiative which essentially our new provost is trying to institute kind of a studio-based education within sciences. And CMU is incredibly scientific, or it's a research university, but the kind of the College of Fine Arts is perceived in a different way. So I'm just wondering if you ever offer any type of workshops on how to set up these kind of platforms for communications.
The Branches of the Same Tree integration report was partially funded by the Carnegie Mellon. So,
well, they fund
and also smaller sections of it were funded by the National Endowment for the Arts of the U.S. and the National Endowment for the Humanities. The nature of the business of the academies is to create reports that advise Congress and the public on issues of science, engineering, technology. So it's not by its nature a very forward-looking institution. It is more about what, basically a consensus of what the science community says is true at the time. And as that relates to universities, they rely on the research that's going on in the universities to provide that expertise. So there's that type of collaboration or partnership that exists. But as far as what happened with NACFE and what happened with the integration report, these are really new ground for the academy, and they're really like trying to figure out how that works. So I'm not sure.
Is there a mentoring? The language is there.
Yeah.
The fact that it's driven by science is within
scientific research is, and they won't
Right.
provide a delight.
So it's a little, because yes, that's actually one of the recommendations is mentoring is part of that process, but the academy itself doesn't do it. It basically is suggesting that universities do that. So this is kind of the sort of, the academy gives advice, but it doesn't necessarily do it. Now, having said that, the Board on Education has actually been doing workshops and town hall meetings, and it will culminate in this one on April 12th in DC. So they do it. I will say that it's not particularly good at disseminating. You kind of have to kind of be a part of the community already, but that's one thing I'm trying to do is raise the awareness here. So does that answer your question? Maybe we can talk more. Okay.
Thank you very much for your talk. Although it isn't exhibited by this group here, in my experience, I found that humanists and artists can be pretty suspicious about the prospect of collaborating with scientists. And I'm curious if you've encountered that. I suspect you have. And if so, how you address that type of reaction. I mean, it's grounded in a significant, sort of gap in trust between representatives of these different areas.
Yeah.
I'm wondering what you do to
It's interesting because my background is in art. I came at it, even though I had some training as an engineer before I became committed to the arts. I came into my job 17 years ago, and I was fully expecting the artists to be all gung-ho and that it was going to be the scientists who had no interest. Well, the scientists, although you can't address what we're doing through traditional art speak, you have to use a more common language. When you lay things out sort of pragmatically as to what the benefits are, they usually get into it. Now, where the lack of trust comes is the scientist typically, the first thing it says, oh yeah, we want to use the artist to help us express our ideals. So it becomes artist as handmaiden rather than what it is here as a cognitive tool of exploration, right? So there is that. So my job has been to try to educate, and this was a big thing within this report because I really wanted to make sure that as a staff member that we really emphasize that what we're talking about in the report in integrative learning is not about illustration, which is not a bad area. I'm not diminishing science illustrators. It's a powerful, wonderful thing, but it's an established area. It's not one that needs to be catalyzed into action. But I think that one thing is to really get, in this part of the collaboration, is to get to understand where people are coming from and to empathize why they do their work. And that's why I asked the question, why do we do what we do? Where's that passion? And once we establish that within a collaborative group, we can start to build that empathy. And I think scientists who just haven't experienced that don't know that. But I think coming into a conversation, and Liz Lehrman was really good about this, if you're an artist and you're invited in to a science community that has some information that you're interested in to actualize what you want to do, and they want help, there's nothing wrong with being of service. There's nothing wrong with sharing a passion. But it's like at some point, we have to find that common shared passion that's beyond our disciplines that we can reach to. And I think that's the area where I think when you finally get people who have a shared interest around X, Y, Z, whatever it is, and you transcend that language of disciplines, you become human and you connect in that way, and then you solve problems or create something magnificent. Does that answer? Okay.